I was hospitalized because I was not told what to expect after surgery. And once my colon and rectum were diverted away from, I just sort of assumed that I could ignore them, and that was absolutely not the case. Hey guys, it's Maggie and I am back today, and today I wanted to answer a question that I recently got on my channel, specifically talking about what happens with your colon, your remaining rectum, what happens with those organs once you're disconnected from using them. I know that on my channel I have definitely talked about this, but I don't know if I've made a video specifically on it, just talking about all of the details, my personal experience with it, basically sharing it in a way that is easily findable by people who may also experience this. Before we get into this video though, I am really excited to share this. This is something I've been thinking about for months since I made this video on this channel talking about kind of how patients can make money. I had a lot of interest. I am still getting comments on that video saying, yes, please share about it. But the more that I thought about it, the more I thought, I don't know if Let's Talk IBD is the right venue to share this in. So I decided to make a second channel, and it officially launched, I guess you could say, on November 1st. And it is called The Social Patient. I am so excited to share it with you. So if you are interested in sharing your patient story online, or how a patient can really monetize their story, how they can make money from being a patient advocate, that channel will talk a lot about it. I am working on videos. I am uploading them. There should be a few already on there at the time of this video going live, but I would love if you checked it out, and if you liked it, subscribed, and followed on Instagram at Social Patient. Anyways, let's get into the whole colon rectum situation, because there's a lot of drama there. If you are unfamiliar, if you just clicked on this video and you're like, oh, what the heck does this girl have going on? I have Crohn's disease. I've had it for a very long time, and it basically attacked my colon and rectum primarily. It's a disease, an autoimmune illness of the GI tract. It causes inflammation basically from your mouth all the way down, or at least it can. But in my case, it was the colon and rectum. So a little over 14 years ago, I went in for a resection surgery just to remove some very inflamed pieces of intestine. And about a week after that surgery, I had my intestines burst open inside of me, wound up with peritonitis, went in for emergency surgery, and came out with an ostomy. An ostomy is a way to divert away from the lower GI system. So in my case, my small intestine was disconnected from my remaining colon, and that small intestine was brought outside of my abdominal wall about an inch. You'll see in other videos that it sticks out about an inch. And then my remaining colon and rectum just kind of sat dormant for about a decade. The idea was to give them a break from food going through it, to hopefully heal the Crohn's disease, let it kind of resolve itself. Of course, if you know my story, that is not what happened, but at the time when I was 16 years old going through this, that was the intent of my new ostomy. There were some things that I really should have been educated about when having this so-called temporary ostomy. That's typically what they call it if you still have the remaining organs and could eventually be reconnected in the future. But I wasn't told them, and it led to me being hospitalized about a year later. So if you've gone through this surgery and you've still even got just a little bit of rectum, if your colon's gone and you still got the rectum, this is very important still. So if you've gone through a diversion surgery and you still have a little bit remaining of your lower GI tract, and that can mean just a little bit of rectum. It doesn't have to include the colon. These are some of the things that you absolutely need to know. The first thing that you need to know is that you will still use the restroom the old-fashioned way. And it'll change over time depending on how far out from your ostomy surgery you are. In my case, I think this will shock many of you. You know, when you go in for scopes, when you go in for a colonoscopy or an endoscopy, they usually have you do a clean out, and that means taking an obscene amount of laxatives to just get your pipes really squeaky clean. But I was shocked before my resection surgery. I was told not to do a clean out, so my intestines had stuff in them. And I know some of you are gonna be like, what? The way that it was explained to me, and I am not a surgeon, I am not claiming that this is correct information, this is just what was told to me. I was told that if I were to clean out my intestines, it could make them more rigid and more difficult to work with during surgery. So that's why they didn't have me do a clean out. Looking back at everything that happened though, it makes me wonder if maybe that could have been beneficial in my case. The only thing they had me do prior to this surgery was nothing to eat or drink past midnight, and that was more so for the aspiration risk than it was for doing bowel surgery. After my ostomy surgery though, when I was still in the hospital, I had some bowel movements, and I know you're probably thinking, you have an ostomy, you don't work that way anymore. But because I didn't do a clean out, because there was still some food hanging out in my intestines, I actually did have like sort of normal bowel movements after surgery, which was really, you know, kind of screwed with my head a little bit, but that did not last very long. Over time, what started to happen was instead of passing stool, as you would normally, I started to pass more mucus-like fluid, and then it kind of stopped. And I was not passing anything. The thing I want you to know about that is not passing anything is not normal. And I should have been told that. The second thing that you need to know is that even if you only have a small amount of rectum left, you will continue to pass fluid. Actually, you will continue to pass mucus. This is totally normal. The colon and rectum normally produce mucus. It's what helps you go to the bathroom. And because you don't have anything of substance going through those intestines or that rectum anymore, you're just gonna see the mucus coming out. It serves no purpose anymore because you're not going to the bathroom, but it's to be expected. So when I said that I stopped having the mucus, that actually wound up being a problem for me. With my Crohn's disease, it kind of destroyed my rectum. I had a very severe stricture, which is also called a narrowing in the rectum, and it made it really difficult for me to go to the bathroom when I was connected. But now that I had an ostomy, it made it difficult for me to pass this mucus. Well, I didn't know I was supposed to be passing mucus, so when it stopped, I thought that was completely normal. About a year after my ostomy surgery, I was a senior in high school, and I remember feeling off. I went to a football game for my high school, and I remember feeling off the whole night. It turned out that I had collected so much mucus in my colon that my colon swelled up, blocked off my small intestine, blocked off my ileostomy, and I no longer had output. So, went to the hospital, had my surgeon take a look at my case, and I believe he discovered it when he did a scope. He tried to do a colonoscopy on me. He dilated my rectum as he had done I don't know how many times in the past when I was, fully functioning, and he discovered 800 milliliters of mucus that had collected. And so in this scope, he drained it all out, and when I woke up, I felt so much better. And that's when we realized we still need to keep your rectum open based on how much mucus you're producing. Like, you need to be going to the bathroom to get this out. I continued to have trouble with this for the 10 years that I had my ostomy while still having my colon and rectum, and the mucus varied. Sometimes it was very watery and easy to get out. Other times it was really thick, but it all just depended on how strictured or narrowed my rectum was, and so we had to keep it open. I remember my freshman year of college, I could tell that it was getting full again. Like, I could feel the mucus in me. You have rectal spasms. You feel like you have to go to the bathroom, but I couldn't. And one night I remember sitting in the bathroom for hours trying to get rid of this mucus, and it was like the dam broke out of nowhere and a whole bunch poured out of me. it was almost immediate relief. And I was glad I was suddenly able to get it out. I don't know what happened that suddenly it came out of me. I guess something stretched, but it made me feel a lot better. So I did continue the conversation with my surgeon to ask about other options to manage this. The third thing you should know is that there are surgical ways of managing this exact issue, this mucus that builds up in your colon and rectum. You can't get rid of it the old way, so how can we get rid of it a different way? And this was a discussion that I had with my surgeon. He had mentioned an option for me called a mucus fistula, in which I would have basically a secondary stoma. It would not be quite like Leroy is, my current ileostomy. It would be basically a small stoma in which mucus would be drained because it would be coming from my colon, and all I would have to do was wear a band-aid on it or some sort of small bandage to absorb this. I have seen patients wear ostomy bags on mucus fistulas. I used to work as a pediatric nurse on GI and saw mucus fistulas before, but if you've never seen one, you kind of want to see how somebody handles it, a really good Instagram account to follow is Billy Anderson X. I'll be honest with you, just taking a glance at her Instagram, I am not 100% certain she still has it. I think she does, but it's so small. It's a bandage that is kind of in her pelvic region. You have to scroll back through her Instagram to see it. That sounds really weird. I'm so sorry. But she has talked about her mucus fistula before. So that is one option of managing it. Another surgical way is a loop stoma. This is something I get asked a lot about my ileostomy is that a loop stoma or is that just, you know, a regular end stoma? I don't know why my surgeon chose to do what he did. The idea was for my ostomy to be temporary, but it may have just been how sick I was that he didn't want to mess around. Maybe he had an inkling that I wouldn't get reversed. He just gave me an end stoma right from the get-go. The stoma that you see in my videos today is the exact stoma that he created. I've had no revisions. He honestly made an absolutely beautiful stoma. I feel so fortunate with it because it doesn't prolapse, knock on wood. It doesn't retract, knock on wood again. It generally behaves itself. But a loop stoma is usually used with temporary ostomies, and they will take the loop of bowel out through your abdomen through an incision, and they will sort of cut partially through the intestine, and your stoma winds up looking like this. If it was like a perfect loop, it would look like this. They generally wind up looking a little smushy, and the openings to them are kind of hidden. They're not as, you know, picturesque as me doing this. But essentially, it creates two openings, one of which is your typical stoma leading from the mouth through the intestines outwards, and then the other opening is from your colon. So into your ostomy bag not only goes stool, but also mucus. And I'm fairly certain, don't quote me on this, but if you want to see a loop stoma, ostomy and stuff on Instagram is a great person to follow. I am fairly certain she has a loop ostomy. I myself have the end ileostomy, so my only route was out the old-fashioned way, and that didn't always work for me and was a really big push for me to make my ostomy permanent and just completely get rid of my colon, my rectum, and sewing my anus shut. Another thing you want to be aware of is you will still have the feeling of going to the bathroom, especially if you're producing a lot of mucus. But I know myself, throughout the years when I did have an anus and a rectum, and now that I don't have one, I get rectal spasms. I got them before, I get them now. They're not obviously quite as severe as they were because there's nothing trying to get out of me. It's just kind of that phantom pain. But before, I would have the urge, and it was kind of urgent for me to go to the bathroom. I also remember never being worried about the urgency because there really wasn't a ton of mucus coming out. So if I couldn't make it to the bathroom, it was not a big deal. I wore a panty liner all the time, and that was enough to catch anything if I didn't make it to the bathroom. But you may be wondering about what it looks like, what it feels like, how often you might pass this mucus. And it really is different for everybody. Like I said, sometimes mine was more watery, sometimes it was more thick. But typically I would have the feeling early on every few days. But as my colon and rectum really declined in health, I felt the urgency more often and passed more mucus, to the point where right before I got rid of my colon and rectum, I was going to the bathroom 5 to 6 times a day trying to pass mucus. Something else you should be aware of if you have had this surgery, and you may have been warned by your surgeon about it. The colon and rectum is designed to absorb nutrients as well, so when you cut them off from your food intake, when they're not really part of your GI system anymore, they lose those nutrients, so they can develop something called diversion colitis. It gets inflamed and it apparently can mimic Crohn's disease a little bit. I know that when they took a look at my colon with a scope, they were actually not sure if it was Crohn's disease in my colon or diversion colitis, or both, but they said, we got to get rid of both. There are a few ways of treating diversion colitis. I think probably the most successful one is getting a reversal and just going back to the old way of going to the bathroom. But the other way is getting fatty acid enemas, specifically short chain fatty acids. This is something that I did discuss with my GI doctor and my surgeon, but we never really went forward with it because of how severe my strictures were. I actually couldn't get enemas in. This is something though that you would go through a special pharmacy to get, and if you're in this situation, you feel like you've got some symptoms, some urgency feelings, and you're wondering if being diverted is negatively impacting your colon or rectum, it's definitely something to explore with your surgeon and your doctor. For me, if you've followed along for a while, you know that my ultimate decision was just to get rid of my colon and rectum. For whatever reason, my Crohn's disease really impacted them the most, and the rest of my GI system has been fairly good and maintained on a biologic. Right after I got my ostomy surgery, it was very manageable. The symptoms of passing the mucus, the urgency, I had a bit of bloating, but it wasn't bad. It was definitely manageable once I realized I should be passing mucus. As time went on and my colon's health declined, it really became obvious to me that it felt like a losing battle. The biologic that I started a few years prior to my proctocolectomy really had zero impact on my colon and rectum. It did nothing for it, and it was helping my small intestine, but it was not helping anything else. And I realized I was spending so much more time in the bathroom and was getting so uncomfortable, so bloated, that I made that decision. I went to a surgeon and I said, could you take a look at what I've got left over and if it's worth keeping? And once he saw it, he said, heck no. That is just my experience though. Some people only keep their ostomies for a short amount of time. This video is still important. This information is still important to you. Make sure you're not ignoring those other organs that you might not be using anymore, but you're still holding on to with the hope that you will use them in the future. Don't ignore them. Give them attention still. Pay attention. Make sure that they're still producing mucus, still feel comfortable, feel like you're maintaining with how often you're going to the bathroom and passing it. It's so important to keep this in mind because you want to keep an eye on the health of the organs, but also know that you can be hospitalized. You can get mucus blocked in there, and it does not feel good. I can tell you from firsthand experience, it is not pleasant. So hopefully this video was helpful to some of you that maybe have those temporary ostomies and you want to make sure that everything's good down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to check out my new channel, The Social Patient, and I will see you in the next. Bye guys.